It's been a while since I last built a Honda, so I figured it is high time to do so again. This time around I will be starting with the unboxing of the Alpha model Honda Civic Type R and the FK8 generation. So let's have a quick look at the box and the contents, and then go over the parts in a bit more detail further on. So let's first start off with some chassis bits. Now normally on Alpha model kits that you've seen me build and unbox in the past before, this is just a plain simple piece with no detail, apart from some kits that might have an exhaust muffler part right there. That's pretty much it. This is the first one that I've seen, and might also be the last one, with some actual detail on the chassis, which is nice for a change. It's not a lot, but it's a lot better than just having it like this with the normal kits. So a bit of detail is really nice to see for a change of pace. I hope they do this more in the future. Some of the additional pieces for on the chassis, of course, a small muffler for the tri-tip exhaust on the rear. The exhaust tips themselves, they are cast in resin, which I kind of would have liked to have seen done in metal. They've done it in the past, so I don't see why they didn't do it on this one. Not a big deal. They can be painted, of course, but just having these in a metal would be a nice detailed touch, specifically for a kit in this price point. The suspension, or better the lack thereof, is pretty much the same as on all Alpha model kits. Just a simple block. You put the wheel in, some holes for the calipers, and then just glue it in place. The front has some really nice big and beefy calipers, which I really like. The rear doesn't really, but that's not to blame on Alpha model. They simply just copied whatever the real car had, and the real car is a bit of a letdown as far as rear brakes, at least for me, as I really like the look of some big beefy brakes, and these rear ones really don't look that great, but again, personal taste. These front ones, awesome. For the discs, there are some discs for the front and rear. The main center piece is done in resin, and the other additional detailed pieces will be done in photo etch, but I will show you those later on. And then finally there are some wheels as well, included with some nice rubber tires. The casting on these is incredibly clean. It does have a smooth sidewall, so no detail there, which is a bit of a shame, but not having to add branding makes it a lot easier due to copyright and things, I guess. But the thread pattern, or the tread pattern itself, really nice, crisp and smooth. The inside is also pretty nice. It does have some markings from the molding left over, but nothing too bad, and it could be sanded and polished off. The wheel itself is cast in a hard resin, same as all the other parts. Nice crisp details, no real mold imperfections to be shown, and should just be straight away ready for paint. Moving on up from the chassis to the interior, it is one main big piece with the rear seats molded in and the center console too. That's a bit of a shame. I really don't like it when kit manufacturers do this, as it makes it a lot harder to paint the center console and also the rear seat, maybe even the parcel shelf, etc. in different colors, as you need to mask off a lot more, and it's just a big piece that would have been pretty easy to do in a separate part. I've seen them do it before, and I've seen them do it after this kit came out as well, so not really sure why they decided to go this route, probably because it is molded in and the way the kit is designed, but I still would have rather seen it just as a separate piece. Same for this one, as it's just flat on the bottom, so why did it need to be molded in? It makes it a lot harder for the mold to be made, and also a lot harder for the builder, and it's just one extra piece, so maybe for in the future. Nonetheless, the casting again, super nice and clean, nothing to complain about there. For the front seats, they decided to go for a two-piece with a bottom half and of course the top. Really nice, crisp, clean parts. Same on the rear. It has some nice panel lines for it to be masked off and painted in multiple colors. Side bolstering is nice and clean, and the pattern for inside the backrest of the seat and the lower is also really, really nice. It's not too deep, but good enough to be masked off and painted. You could also just scribe it out a little more, but overall it is there and nicely done. There's also some accessory parts like the steering wheel, steering column, and the manual shift gear, shift lever, gear stick, thing to change your gears. Steering wheel has some really, really nice details on it for all of the buttons, and probably with a couple of the decals and a little bit of painting, this will look incredible. There's some door panels as well, of course. A couple of photo etch pieces will be added on later, and some more detail pieces for the door handles are separate, but those are really, really tiny, so I'll just show you those during the build and not bother you with them right here. Dashboard, incredibly well detailed, same as all of the other interior pieces. Some really, really nice and sharp panel lines all over for the small pinstriping that you can do along the dashboard. The vents are really, really nicely and cleanly done. Same with all of the other details and buttons all over. Super, super nicely done. So for the clear parts, we have the usual pre-cut, pre-painted flat pieces that need to be glued on and can be a bit of a pain in the rear. But although they are a bit of a pain, they do look nice and crisp, and with these lines already painted on, it makes it a lot easier. But still, since it's a pretty flat piece, it is kind of hard to glue them in place, and the part that I look forward least during one of these builds, but that's probably one of the only downsides to these kits, and maybe I shouldn't complain about it. And next to those, there are some cast parts as well for various bits around. Some of the indicators, I believe these are for in the headlights, the third brake light, etc. And also the headlight lens and the taillight lens in this case are also molded and casted instead of having a vacuum formed piece, due to it being pretty complicated. And with these very, very clear and crisp parts, it's really nice to see these instead of some flat pieces that you need to bend and glue yourself. So this is really nice to see. On the main body, most of the detailed parts, bumpers, etc. are molded onto it, which I will show later on, but there are some pieces that are molded and casted separately, like the rear view mirrors, the rear spoiler, and that is actually made out of two parts. I believe this is a lower half on the roof with the third brake light, and this one should be a bit higher on top of it, poking out a little more for a bit more of an aggressive look. And there are some other pieces like all of the door handles, which are molded separately, which is a nice thing to see, as now you can actually have the 3D effect of going behind it and not having it fully enclosed and casted in. And then there are some grille surrounds and stuff for all round too, and some photo etch pieces to go into these later on. Now, speaking of the exterior, and probably the piece you've been waiting for this entire video, the body. Now, like I said, a lot of the parts for the details are molded in. This is pretty much one big part with all of the side skirts, the extended side skirts, the front splitter, front bumper, all the emblems, logos, grills, pretty much everything apart from the door handles and some of the other bits. So pretty much not everything. A lot has been molded in. It is molded in very, very nicely. So super crisp lines, sharp edges, and details all over, so that is great. But since a lot of these accent pieces need to be masked off and painted black, that does require a lot of masking if you're not going to be painting the car black, which I'm not, so that's going to be a lot of masking. Nonetheless, super aggressive styling from Honda here. Really, really cool car, and I'm excited to start working on it. And on the interior, there are some bits for the headliner molded in like usual. Very crisp, very nice. Not a lot of this will be seen, but it's still good to have some detail here, as a lot of the other kits from other manufacturers don't have anything here at all. So it's nice to see that they did spend some time here. Now there are no mold lines on here. The molding is pretty much done from the underside. There were some bubbles, but they've also filled these in before sending the kit out, so that is nice to see. Already taken care of, so that saves me some time. All the panel lines themselves are not really all that deep. They are deep enough to scribe out a little bit deeper, which I will definitely need to do. And there are quite a lot of them, so that will be a bit of work. But at least they are there. They are deep enough. But before painting, they definitely need to be scribed out a little bit more. As usual, with an alpha model kit, you do get a lot of photo etch. Some parts for the interior and exterior, a couple of the speaker grills, some of the mirror parts and bits, but there are some metal transfers for the mirrors as well, so not really sure why they include it, but it's nice to see. Then some more grills, even some wipers, the gas pedal, brake pedal, clutch, and some additional pieces to add onto it for a bit more depth and realism, and of course the nice big beefy front brakes, and then the small disappointing rear brakes. Various bits and pieces for the interior, all the seatbelt stuff, etc. Some more mesh and wipers, and even some screens. I believe the head-up display may be on the dashboard, if it's there. No head-up display there, just maybe the main screen in the center, but there's going to be a decal there, so again, no idea why they add those, but I see that a lot, and it kind of makes sense for them, I guess, not for me. Nonetheless, cool. And then some photo etch seatbelts, which I don't really like to use, as when you paint them, you bend them, and then all of the paint chips off. But the detail is really cool to see on these, but for me, these are pretty useless. And then finally, some decals and metal transfer stickers. So these are some kind of metal mirrory stickers, which I really love for all of the rear view mirrors and some of the badging on the rear. Super realistic, super nice, and super easy to use. And then we also have some partial metal transfers, but also kind of decals. These are really, really nice and shiny. Have some decals on them as well, and they work like decals. So let's just call them metal decals. I really, really love these as they look amazing. And then there is also a small decal sheet for all of the other bits around. Some Brembo logos, some more Type R's, a couple of screen bits, even some buttons for on the dashboard, and probably steering wheel somewhere, the gauge cluster, and oh, these are the buttons for the steering wheel, I guess, and maybe some other stuff. Really nice, really crisp, and look really forward to building this. If you have any suggestions on the color, I'm going to be thinking about doing it in a yellow, maybe a pearl yellow, but any other suggestion will be much appreciated, so do leave a comment down below. I look at all of them. I don't reply to all of them, but at least I read them. So thanks for commenting, thanks for subscribing, and also thank you to all of my Patreons for supporting my builds and my videos. And if you're interested in helping support the channel, I will be leaving a link in the description down below to my Patreon or to become a YouTube channel member. Thank you all for supporting me, and I look forward to sharing this build with you.